Here is Lord of the Rings, Christianity and Islam, but focus on Islam mostly, part 2. If you haven't watched part 1, it's in my channel, so you can go ahead and click on it if you want. It talks about like the intro to the Lord of the Rings, and also like topics like desires and mercy and things like that. So I recommend you watch part 1 first and then come back to part 2. But if you have already watched part 1, yeah, like sit back and yeah, enjoy. So the first topic will be mentioned is martyrdom and death. So I'm going to read a few quotes just to get you in the mood of the theme. So Pippin says, "I didn't think it would end this way." Gandalf says, "End? No, the journey doesn't end here. Death is just another path, one that we all must take. The grey rain curtain of this world rolls back and all turns to silver glass, and then you see it." Pippin says, "What? What, Gandalf? See what?" "White shores and beyond, a far green country under a swift sunrise." Pippin says again, "Well, that isn't so bad." "No, no, it isn't," Gandalf says. So, the Lord of the Rings talks about the idea of death a lot, and the most prominent conversation is when Gandalf actually comforts Pippin during the battle, during like one of the final battles actually, saying that death is not the end and it's only the beginning, and you shouldn't really be afraid of death, and especially if you're fighting for an honorable cause. And so we learned that the Lord of the Rings has like also like many examples of bad deaths where nations across Middle Earth were like perished. For example, Eriador, Numenor, Ithilien, and which later actually turns to Minas Morgul. And in all of these situations, Sauron or Morgoth, which is like the Satan figure, persuades the men with the promise of immortality, like the elves. And we actually touched upon this in part 1, which is why I'm saying you should watch part 1. One of the topics there is called Perished Nations, and which actually covers this in a lot of detail. So yeah, and like a very good example of the story of like of death, like in this example of a bad death, is the story of Ar-Pharazôn in the Silmarillion, where the last king of Numenor actually broke the ban of the Valar. And it's a ban, the ban is basically not to sail any further to the Undying Lands. And this character, who is a man, Ar-Pharazôn, broke the ban and set sail to a heaven which actually wasn't his. The Vala is basically like elvish heaven, basically, and because since he's a man king, he was not allowed to go, but he went anyway, and this only led to the death of him and almost his entire people. So yeah, and another example is like ring wraiths and the undead, which were cursed to live forever, never finding any peace. Ring wraiths have like an eternal desire for the ring, while the undead were cursed until their oath was fulfilled in like the second book or the second movie. So another quote is, "Arise, arise, riders of Theoden, fell deeds awake, fire and slaughter, spears shall be shaken, shield be splintered, a sword day, a red day, ere the sun rises. Ride now, ride now, ride to Gondor." If you watch the movie, this scene is really epic. I recommend you watching this scene. So yeah, another quote from the similar scene is, "Then suddenly he beheld his sister Eowyn as she lay, and he knew her. he stood a moment as a man who is pierced in the midst of a cry by an arrow through the heart, and then his face went deathly white, and a cold fury rose in him, so that all speech failed him for a while. A fey mood took him. Eowyn, Eowyn, he cried at last. Eowyn, how come you here? What madness or devilry is this? Death, 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 death take us all. Then, without taking counsel or waiting for the approach of the men of the city, he spurred headlong back to the front of the great host and blew a horn and cried aloud for the onset. Over the field rang his clear voice calling, Death! Ride, ride to ruin and the world's ending. And with that the host began to move. But the Rohirrim sang no more. Death they cried with one voice, loud and terrible, and gathering speed like a great tide, their battle swept about their fallen king and passed roaring away southwards. It's a very moving scene. So Theoden and martyrdom will focus on this concept and this character especially. So this is a case study. So Theoden, as an intro of his character, was a king of Rohan, which is like an area in Middle Earth. We see him first in the story when he was poisoned by Saruman the wizard and Grima Grima Wormtongue, which was his kind of like henchman, I guess, like assistant, to the point where he let his rule slide through his fingers. His son was dead. He banished his loyal nephew and his own entire army and allowed Eowyn, his niece, to be under the mercy of Grima Wormtongue, who is kind of implied to like basically like harass her as well. So but eventually during the story he was kind of healed in his torment of Grima Wormtongue and his how do I say it, his possession of Grima Wormtongue. Like he was kind of like possessed by Grima Wormtongue, and he was healed by Gandalf eventually. And we learned that Gandalf actually wanted Theoden to join forces with him against Saruman and his army of the Ring, and this is why the Battle of Helm's Deep takes place. And eventually, while they're fighting in the battle, the battle is actually like they're losing in the battle. And what happens is that Theoden, for a moment, actually completely gives up fighting in this battle, thinking that it's futile because Saruman's army, and he has an orc army filled with like thousands of orcs compared to only the small tiny ruling of Theoden and his people. And he just wants to give up and let Saruman win and let the ring basically be taken by evil forces. So yeah, eventually like he has to be persuaded by Aragorn. And like credit to Aragorn, he puts forth a really great speech which kind of rekindles Theoden's spirit, and he eventually leads his army into many battles after this with honor, and eventually actually the character of Theoden dies as a martyr. So for a person who literally like gives up completely and surrenders to death, surrenders to death in the most like cowardice way possible, like completely giving up and letting the enemy win, to a person shouting for death upon the battlefield with honor, and actually being a martyr in this worthy cause, shows Tolkien's epic character. Epic in the sense that, in the literary sense, where the character development is so good and so in depth, and it shows that how people can change if they have the right support and also an honorable cause. So this kind of links to Islam and the concept of martyrdom. Like in the West, in the Western discourse, we're really especially post 9/11, we're taught and it's kind of ingrained in us that martyrdom is very negative and is actually associated with terrorism and terrorists, and also the buzzword jihad as well. And we find that in the Western narrative of their own literature, martyrdom, like in Lord of the Rings, is actually honored, and we find this in King Theoden as well, where he dies upon the field, shouting for death and shouting and fighting for a worthy cause, which is against Saruman and Sauron, against the war, against the ring, basically. And he fights to the bitter end, and he gives his life for this worthy cause. So in Islam, martyrdom, like in Arabic, is called shahada, and martyr is called shaheed, holds a really highly revered, honorable status. And it reflects the ultimate form of devotion and sacrifice and sincerity for the sake of Allah or God. So in the Quran it says, do not think those who are slain in the cause of Allah as dead. Rather, they are alive with their Lord, receiving provision. So Tolkien and death. So we wonder why Tolkien has a very much like big focus on death upon the battlefield. We find this in the Battle of Helm's Deep and the Battle of the Rohirrim and in the final battle of the Men as well. We find that in his background, he was a soldier in World War One, where he saw his friends die and also lived through World War Two too as well. Dying on the battlefield was actually a real concept for him and very real possibility for him also, since he was actually a soldier in World War One. So in the Silmarillion, he also says or writes, for it is said that after the departure of the Valar, there was a silence, and for an age Ilúvatar sat alone in thought. Then he spoke and said, behold, I love the earth, which shall be a mansion for the Quendi and the Atani. But for the Quendi shall be the fairest of all earthly creatures, and they shall have and shall conceive and bring forth more beauty than all of my children, and they shall have the greater bliss in this world. But to the Atani I will give a new gift. Therefore he willed that the hearts of men should seek beyond the world and should find no rest therein, but they should have a virtue to shape their life amid the powers and chances of the world beyond music of the Ainur, which is as fate to all things else. It is one with this gift of freedom that the children of men dwell only a short space in the world alive, and are not bound to it, and depart soon whither the elves know not. But the sons of men die indeed and leave the world, wherefore they are called the guests or strangers. Death is a fate, the gift of Ilúvatar, which as time wears even in the powers shall envy. So here we literally see the Atani, which is men. Well, Quendi is the elves, which are actually like given an earthly heaven, but the men, Atani, are given this gift, and it's actually said that it's actually a new gift, and men should seek beyond the world, and they will actually find no rest within the world itself. And it's actually a gift of freedom too. And we actually explore that the nature of death in Middle Earth, in the middle of the world, death is seen as a gift, and is actually freely given as a gift by Eru Ilúvatar, the one God. And it's seen as like a release for humankind and an escape of all the material world. And it's also a freedom to be given this gift, because you're very much free in the afterlife, whereas you're bound to the earthly world. It is like a direct command from God too, and therefore death has a greater divine purpose, because it's actually given to us by God or by Eru Iluvata. Though we may not know it fully, death is nothing to be feared. Death is like a journey to get closer to God, and this world is literally just only like a material world. And Tolkien, though Tolkien sees death as a gift to the greater purpose of the hereafter, he does not deny the sorrow that comes with death. So, for example, Boromir's martyrdom, which we discussed also in part 1, is mourned by Gimli, mourned by Aragorn and Legolas, and they actually sing like a very beautiful but sad poetry. And the elves themselves also can die from depression, which is actually like a very sorrowful death. Arwen's choice of mortality over immortality proves to be a sorrowful death for her, where she dies alone, without Aragorn, the one who she loves the most, but also is filled with the hope that like the afterlife is promised to men. So Islam and Christianity and how they deal with death. So in Islam, we see that Khalid ibn Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, said that I bring you men who desire death as ardently as you desire life. And Abdullah ibn Amr reported that God's messenger, peace be upon him, saying, the gift to a believer is death. This explains that death frees a person from the hardships of this world and is a means of reaching the hereafter. It is regarded as a gift. This is literally like word for word what Tolkien says as well. Like a gift, death is a gift. And were it not for death, heaven or the hereafter or Jannah may not have even been created. So we have to have death for us to reach the afterlife. In Christianity, it's kind of similar. It says, if we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So whether we live or we die, we belong to the Lord. And in Christianity, it also says, then when our dying bodies have been transformed into bodies that will never die, this scripture will be fulfilled. Death is swallowed up in victory. So here's a bit of a question for you, the audience. So like, if you were given the choice, if you were half elven and half men, so basically in the world of Middle Earth, if your parent is half elven and one parent is a half elf and another parent is half man, they are actually given the choice between whether to live as a human or an elf. And basically, elves have immortality and men obviously have mortality. But this is the question. If you choose to be an elf, you would like live as an immortal being and go to an earthly heaven, like a limited heaven, but heaven nonetheless, and a heaven that you know. Or you could choose to be a human, and which is like suffer the fate of death, but go to an unknown heaven where you can have anything you've ever wanted, and to be close to Eru Iluvata or God. You'll have the gift of man, which is death. So if you were given the choice between these two choices, if you were half elven and half men, which one would you choose? It's kind of a difficult question. I'm not sure myself. So the second topic we're going to discuss is leadership. So Aragorn as the leader, literally, I think in this day and age we lack leadership, especially in the Muslim world, especially after the fall of the caliphate. We in Sunni Islam, we lack a leader. So like looking to Lord of the Rings, Aragorn as a leader, he heads straight first into battle and organizes everyone so they know what must be done. He is also emotionally available and has hope for the greater good, even if the odds are stacked against them. And this was actually learnt after Boromir's death. he was very, very regretful after Boromir's death, because he sees that in the beginning of the entire story, Aragorn flees from his purpose, which is he was born to rule. He was born to rule Gondor, but because he didn't like this role that he was given, he kind of just runs away and becomes like a ranger or Dunedain, and he runs away from his true purpose. But because of this, the stewards were put in place, and for example, it was Boromir, and as a result, Boromir died doing his like stewardly duties, I guess, and he felt very regretful of this, and he felt that Boromir's death was his own fault because he should have been the leader of Gondor, not Boromir. Boromir wasn't made to be leader of Gondor, but Aragorn was. He was born to be. But because of his absence, Boromir, his friend, his brother, died. Well, his brother in arms died. So after his death, he becomes very emotionally available to his people, and also he becomes physically available to his people too, because after this he leads the army, and he he organizes everyone also in their one purpose of defeating the ring. And as a side note as well, he respects women and other minority groups, and he also leads to serve. So, for example, he doesn't belittle Eowyn, and he doesn't belittle the hobbits either, even though they are literally in his camp. And a lot of people may say that they are not really worthy to fight, or worthy to have an opinion on like the greater matters of Middle Earth, whereas he is the king. But he does give them the time, and he does give them time, and he serves them as well. He leads to serve. He's also very humble. Initially, he did not want power, but until he was thrust upon that power, he leads with humility, but also with like a powerfulness too. And the Prophet said, peace be upon him, said that the leader of a people is their servant. And also, we see that Faramir and Boromir are seen as stewards. Like after the king left, after Aragorn left, the stewards were in, like I said, and stewards are literally, the Arabic term for it is literally khilafa or khalifa. In Christianity, it's also said that care for the flock that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willfully, not grudgingly, not for what you will get out of it, but what you are eager to serve, because you are eager to serve God. And this kind of aligns with like the next topic: fate, trust, and qadr of Allah. So, in Middle Earth, or like in Lord of the Rings in general, there are many ways where like Lord of the Rings could have ended. Like, for example, Frodo could have died many times, and most of the time he literally just about scrapes away from death. For example, during the fight against the Nazgul, Frodo literally calls upon an angel for help, and because he takes the time in doing that, he takes the time in calling an angel for help, the sword pierces his shoulder and not his heart. And it kind of reminds me of a quote like, dua is the weapon of a believer. And here we see that Frodo literally, although like not dua for like not not a prayer for God, but prayer with an calling upon an angel, nonetheless. But he does take the time in praying, and it is kind of like a weapon for the believer, because if you're not for that weapon, if you're not for that prayer, he could have been pierced in his heart. and the entire story would have just stopped there. He would have failed his mission and died. And also, like, another example is that this is like a coincidence of the Lord of the Rings, is that the nine Nazgul, or the nine ring wraiths, mirror the nine companions of the Fellowship. The nine companions, like, also just so happen to serve to I mean meet up in Rivendell, and no one told them to show. It's kind of like, I know that Boromir and Faramir had repeated dreams of seeing Rivendell, and also, like, Frodo goes there kind of accidentally, because he kind of has the ring. Um, he's been given the ring accidentally from Bilbo, and he just so happens to meet Aragorn, who's also there, who meets up with him in also, and they go to Rivendell as well. And Legolas happens to be there too, and Gimli too as well. Yeah, so Elrond, who is kind of like the leader, the leader of Rivendell, was all like, as a result of that, he was able to organize a huge meeting on how they were going to destroy the ring. Also, another coincidence. So if Bilbo hadn't shown mercy to Gollum, Gollum wouldn't have been there in Mount Doom to fall into the volcano with the ring. So this shows that how showing, like, hidden good deeds, doing hidden good deeds is important, and even while, like, no one is watching, it's good to do them, because it could happen, it could be that down the line good things might come out of it, which we discuss in part 1 too. It just goes to show that Satan plans, but God plans too, and we should be mindful of it. Even if we don't know what that plan is yet, we should still have faith in that plan, in God's plan, because all these aren't just coincidences. These aren't just in times. It's literally the qadr of Allah. It's literally it's pre-planned by God. Whatever happened because it was planned by God. God knows that it's going to happen. So another topic we're going to discuss, we'll move on, is woman. So Eowyn is one of my favorite characters in the entire Lord of the Rings, or entire Middle-earth franchise, actually. So yeah, although Lord of the Rings does not have a lot of female characters, the ones that are shown are very nuanced and have literally a lot of agency. And the Lord of the Rings show shining examples of both men and women having genuinely good people, which embody both the masculine and feminine in them, and they're all shown as positive characters. Each show their duty and honor, but also show their humility and love for each other and for their passions. So, for example, Middle Earth mirrors the real world a lot of the time, especially when it comes to the area of Rohan, where women have their set roles and men have their set roles. And women, it's kind of like a Middle Ages type of vibe of, like, Middle England. And it shows, like, how women stay in the home and do their duty to their family. And Theoden also asks Eowyn, his niece, to stay in the home, stay in Rohan during the Battle of Middle Earth, even though she was a skilled warrior herself and wanted to be with her uncle and brother in the battlefield. But despite this, Theoden says, despite home roles being noble and good, she should, I mean, like, Theoden says to stay at home. But despite home roles being noble and good, Eowyn felt like it wasn't fit for her, and she didn't feel she had the agency to take care of the home, I guess. She says herself, shall I always be left behind with the riders depart when the riders depart to mind the house, while they win renown and find food and beds when they return? Merry also says, and or I mean, Merry faces similar distress when he is rejected by the army of Rohan in wanting to fight. And both Eowyn and Merry go together in hiding eventually, uh, and eventually defeat the legendary undefeatable Witch King. So it shows that women have agency, and they have a choice of choosing whether or not to do their duty. Well, they all do their duty, but it's the choice of how they go about it that matters. So Elrond, for example, another example for this is Elrond wanting his daughter Arwen to go to the Undying Lands and not to be with Aragorn during the Battle of Middle Earth. But Arwen chooses and is one of the very, very few people to choose a mortal life over an immortal one. So, for example, just to backtrack, um, Arwen wants to be with the one that she loves, who is Aragorn, but to do so, to do so, and to be with a human is to basically give up her immortality as an elf, and she actually chooses to give up her immortality to choose a mortal life just to be with Aragorn, and it's a very big decision, but she chooses that decision against the wishes of Elrond, who wanted Arwen to go to the Undying Lands to live immortally. She literally gives up Elvish heaven just to be with Aragorn. So yeah, like another example of a woman with agency is Galadriel. Galadriel is an elf queen who has led her people for thousands of years, even before the time of the War of the Ring. She gives aid to the Fellowship also, and is also one of the very few people who is actually able to resist the temptation of the ring. And she's shown as to be a very wise and kind woman, especially to Frodo too. There's also the likes of Rosie Cotton, Sam's future wife, who awaits patiently for the four hobbits to return to the Shire. So we discussed before how women are like leaders, and not leaders, like women who fight in the battlefield. For example, Eowyn, we find that Arwen also gives up completely her immortality to choose a mortal life. We see that there's an elvish queen also, but some might say that, okay, but what about like the woman of the house, housewives or mothers? This is the character of Rosie Cotton. Rosie Cotton is actually Sam's future wife, and she displays the normal house role, and she kind of shows how these characters can be just as good and can have just as active roles in the story. For example, because of her existence, because of Sam's love for her, and Sam's yearning for her in the Shire, her existence is what actually led to Sam's optimism in the story, and she actually gives Sam something to hope for in the end. And yeah, like it just goes to show every character in The Lord of the Rings makes a choice whether to leave and fight in battle or whether to stay at home. They all make a choice. Similarly, also the men are displayed with having different personalities, and not just masculine traits, but also like they do have feminine traits too, and it makes them seem much more kinder as people and humble as well. And it's literally like the ideal example of positive masculinity. For example, Aragorn is a humble leader, but also a really great fighter, and basically like one of the best fighters in Middle Earth. And like this is a quote which I really like from him. Yet their deeds will not be less valiant because they are unpraised. And this goes to show that he's very humble, like he will do deeds even if they are unpraised. But he shows that they aren't less valiant, they aren't less honorable if you do these um, in a hidden manner. For another example is Faramir. He's a lover of law, but also of music, and is also, like, I'd say he's misunderstood a lot, especially by his father, and is looked down upon even by his father. But he's shown to be a great soldier at the same time. For example, he says, I do not love this bright sword for its sharpness, nor the arrow for its swiftness, nor the warrior for his glory. I love only that which they defend. And this proves that even when he is made fun of for loving law and music and traditionally womanly hobbies, he does fight. He does, when the call to arms comes, he does fight, but he doesn't like fighting. He doesn't like fighting, but he only likes fighting. The part that he loves about fighting is the meaning of why he fights. The reason why he fights. Boromir, also known for his strength, this is a character who actually likes fighting. Boromir and Faramir are brothers. Faramir doesn't like to fight, but he fights and only likes the purpose of fighting. Boromir is known for his strength and fighting, and he loves to fight. He fights as a hobby, basically. But he's also seen as very gentle and friendly to people too, especially to the hobbits. And he says to Frodo, Gandalf's death was not in vain, nor would he have you give up hope. You carry a heavy burden, Frodo. Don't carry the weight of the dead. Here in this scene, he comforts Frodo after the death of Gandalf, which really upsets Frodo. But here Boromir gives comforting words, like quiet words to Frodo, even though he's seen as like a manly fighter. Gandalf, he is known as the wise old mentor figure, but he's also seen as a very good fighter too. So here I kind of made a collage, I guess, of different characters, and they're both like binary, but I'd say compatible traits for men, for like the male characters of Middle Earth. Lord of the Rings. So, for example, you have Frodo. He's a working class man, but is also very selfless. Sam is very loyal and hopeful, but down to earth. Merry is sensible, but a troublemaker. Pippin is good natured, but also a troublemaker. Bilbo is clever but adventurous. Aragorn is seen as the absolute perfect man, but also very nice and humble about it. Boromir is charismatic and friendly. He's kind of like the Giga Chad kind of man, but he's very friendly and nice and charismatic. Faramir, the underestimated, quiet, low in confidence, but still manages to be positive and show respect. Elrond is a noble and a commander. Haldir is weary but vigilant. Legolas is like the hyped archer, but somehow still kind of underrated. Gimli is hard on the outside but soft on the inside kind of man. Eomer is harsh but protective big brother, is the protective big brother. Gandalf is the loving and wise mentor, and Theoden, which we talked about before, is like the martial spirit, and he's very honorable too. Likewise, we have the female characters. Arwen is headstrong but peaceful and chooses love overall. Galadriel is proud but gentle and chooses wisdom overall. Eowyn is bold but underrated, but an underrated warrior. She's also a healer and chooses courage and healing overall. Rosie Cotton, she's kind and easygoing and chooses patient overall. So we know that in Islam, Islam gave like a lot of rights to women. For example, the right to property, to vote, to inheritance. And Islam also stopped the killing of infant female babies too. There are like a few instances of women being in battle. For example, Nusayba, may Allah be pleased with her. She's known to have fought in the Battle of Uhud. Many women in Islam are given agency in the Quranic stories. For example, Musa alayhi salam, for Moses, and Musa alayhi salam's mother, Moses' mother, both adopted and biological. They both have agency. For example, Musa alayhi salam's mother, the adopted mother, Asiya, may Allah be pleased with her, she defied the Pharaoh in her own right and sadly was killed for it. And Musa alayhi salam's biological mother, she gave her trust, complete trust in Allah, to the point where she surrendered her own child and basically dropped him in the river, dropped him in the river in the trust of Allah. So she had agency there. Hajar, may Allah be pleased with her, she actually has the entire story of Zamzam, and the entire, like an entire whole Hajj section is literally dedicated to her. We literally run towards Marwa and Safa just because of this story. And Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, she was the first Muslim. She was the first person to believe in the Prophet, even before the Prophet, peace be upon him, believed in himself. And also we have Sumayya, may Allah be pleased with her. She was the first martyr for Islam in the era where, like, it wasn't known like if Islam would be the greatest religion or the most important religion of our time. She didn't know that herself, but she literally gave her life towards the cause of Islam. And it was very, very early Islam as well, and not many people actually recognize how she gave her life for Islam that early, when no one would know how important Islam would be in the future. So yeah, huge respect to her as well. So Maryam alayhi salam also is seen as like the greatest female example in both religions, in both Christianity and Islam. So I think this is the last topic we'll discuss, environmentalism. And I think this is one of the most underrated topics in society today, let alone underrated in Islam and in religion. We rarely talk about environmentalism. So let's start. You could say that Tolkien was a huge environment advocate. He lived through both World War I and World War II and saw the destruction and death that it caused, not only to his own people, not only to the people, general people, but to the environment too. So during industrialization, he saw his entire village in Berkshire becoming modernized and began to have a dislike for the use of machines and the cutting down of trees. Also, we forget that in World War I and World War II, the environment was literally destroyed via bombing and via machinery too, like in weaponry, in guns, in artillery, in tanks as well. All of this destroyed the natural world and it literally riddled the world in smoke and fire and ash. And a lot of people don't acknowledge this. We acknowledge the death of people, but not the death of the environment. And it's really evident in The Lord of the Rings. For example, where Saruman the wizard orders the orcs to destroy the forests, and orders to get like quick resources for the war, not knowing that the forests also had Ents in them, and Ents are literally living creatures, living trees who have almost gone extinct because of this. And when the Ents are shown the horrors of Saruman's evil deeds of killing these trees, sacred trees, they all band together with Merry and Pippin and eventually defeat and destroy all of Saruman's work and Saruman himself. Eventually, it later destroys Saruman basically as a result. It shows nature has a way of fighting back, and when they do, it's literally all the more powerful. And we see this in the real world, in the natural world. We're destroying our environment, but what happens is that natural disasters get bigger, way bigger. Earthquakes get more powerful, tsunamis get more powerful, volcano eruptions get more powerful. Everything just amps up to an extreme. Hurricanes, tornadoes, you name it. So yeah, like Treebeard the Ent says, "Side, I am on nobody's side because nobody is on my side." And this is a tree talking. This is a living tree talking, and we see that nobody is on the side of the trees. Caring for the environment in Tolkien's time was not very fashionable. Like, for example, even now, it's not very fashionable. There's a reason why we care for the Shire so much in The Lord of the Rings, and it's not just because it's where the hobbits live. It's because the Shire is seen as a completely idyllic place of peace, filled with nature and gardens. And it's ironic because Jannah is literally described with nature and with gardens too. Bilbo says, "It's where our hearts truly lie." So hobbits themselves have a love for nature and all things that grow. Most of them are farmers actually and grow their own food. They are part of the earth, and as a result, they do not seek power because they are seen as grounded and humble, and they know that they belong to the earth. So Tom Bombadil, the hobbits, the Ents, even the Dunedain, who are rangers who actually like live among, they travel, they are travelers basically of the earth, in the earth, and they're all seen as one with nature and are depicted as good, unlike Saruman or Sauron, who are opposed to the environment, who actively destroy the environment and destroy people. And they're more than happy to destroy it. You can say that Saruman does not think that nature is sacred, so he can do what he likes with it. And the want for absolute power is also tied to the destruction of the environment. So we can see that in Islam, it sees as humans as stewards of nature, and therefore it has a lot to say on the environment and the fair treatment of it. And we as Muslims, we really need to be mindful of this and wary of this because, like I said, a lot of natural disasters are increasing in their strength, and it just so happens to be that a lot of Muslim nations are affected by this. I would say the most. For example, like in my own in my own ethnic country of Bangladesh, Bangladesh is literally known for its floods. More and more people have been affected by floods. More like the more years that go by, the stronger the floods, the more people have been dying. And it's very sad to see. If you want to see what climate change looks like, just go to Bangladesh. You'd see in real time how land has been decaying just because of erosion, land erosion, and the floods. It's very real over there, and it's the reason. It's a reason why I think Bangladesh. It's a reason why Bangladesh is so adamant on environmentalism as well. Like where Bangladesh has a huge focus on saving the mangrove forests because it literally centers around it anchors the soil inside the plants and stuff like that. But yeah, that's just one example. But you also have like the Middle East, which has been growing in increasing in temperature. Also, you have, it's very strange, but you have like countries like Oman and the UAE experiencing flooding for the first time also. And because of these countries, they're not accustomed to floods. It ruins a lot of infrastructure there as well. And yeah, you have like hurricanes and tsunamis across Asia. You have starvation and famine across Africa as well. These are just small examples. There are many examples. So yeah, like in Islam, the creation in Islam, this is a quote from the Quran. The creation of the heavens and earth is greater than the creation of mankind, but most of the people do not know. The reality is that nothing could be more Islamic than protecting God's precious creation, the earth. I want you to think about this for a moment. The creation of the heavens and the earth, the creation of the earth is greater than the creation of mankind. Yet we focus on mankind so much, but we never focus on the earth. We never focus and give care to the earth. And this is literally a Quran quote saying that the earth is a greater creation than the creation of mankind. We need to care about the earth. One could say even more than we care about the creation of mankind. This is literally in the Quran. This is one interpretation. So yeah, it also says that there is no animal that crawls on the earth, no bird that flies with its wings, but communities like you. We have neglected nothing in the book of decree. Then to the Lord will they all be mustered. So here we see that animals, creatures like birds and like creatures that crawl, for example, like cattle and things like that. The communities like us, we need to be careful, and we need to care for them, like just as much as we care for our kind too. And it just speaks how much we've neglected animal kind. We literally, not only do we ransack and destroy the environment, but we also destroy the animals that live in these environments too. We're responsible for a lot of endangered species becoming endangered. Also actually in historical times, we're responsible for the complete extinction of animals too. So we really need to take this into consideration, especially in these times where everything is just, where the earth is actually being destroyed in its peak time. Oh yeah, okay. This is the end of the topics, the end of days. So we all have seen the movies, Sauron in the tower having one eye. Also in the books is Sauron actually is described as having one eye. The eye is very similar to the Dajjal. The Dajjal will have one eye as well, similar to how Sauron had the one eye. Aragorn, I think, in my opinion, he's kind of like the Mahdi figure. He's kind of he's like the king, who's helping to usher in a new age, and he's the one who kind of revives the men in the battle of end times as well. So, I mean, yeah, the end of battles. So yeah, the Dagorath in Sindarin, the Battle of Battles, or the final battle in the end of times event is described also, and is alluded to in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. So he literally has a section on the end of times. He kind of alludes to it, and he calls like the final battle the battle of all battles, which is kind of similar to the final battle in Islam as well, in the during the end of times, where like Isa alayhi salam will destroy the Dajjal and usher in also a new age after the Mahdi. The account is also clearly inspired by and bears many similarities to the Norse legend of Ragnarok, but also to that of the biblical Armageddon, or like the biblical end of times. So Morgoth will be unbound also, just like Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and the Dajjal will be unbound. Turin Turamba, who is my favorite character of all time in all of Middle Earth, will be resurrected, and he will actually kill Morgoth once and for all. So you can maybe count this as like a messianic figure, where he will be where he will kill Satan once and for all, and like yeah, the Dajjal once and for all. Thereafter, this is a quote. Thereafter shall the earth be broken and remade, and the Silmarils shall be recovered out of air and earth and sea, and Feanor shall surrender them willingly. Yavanna will rekindle the two trees, and a great light shall come forth, and the mountains of Valinor shall be levelled, so that the light shall go out all over the world, out over all the world. In that light the Valar will grow young again, and the elves awake, and all their dead arise, and the purpose of Iluvatar be fulfilled concerning them. So this is very similar to Judgment's Day, where everything will be leveled. In Islam also, everything will be leveled. Allah will tell the angels to destroy everything, destroy everyone. Everyone will be dead, but also everyone will be resurrected again. Everyone will be awake again. The dead shall arise, and also this is the day where God's judgment will be fulfilled. We will all know what God's judgment will be during the end of days, even in Islam, similar to that of Tolkien's end of days. So yeah, this has been really, I'd say, it's been really enlightening to do this series of. I really enjoyed comparing Lord of the Rings and Islam. I really love both of them. So yeah, I think like a lot of people might take this as a joke or something, but I think these are actual lessons that we can actually learn and derive from. I think the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's wider work of Middle Earth has tons of things that we can learn as Muslims, partly because it's actually derived from his Catholic faith, and it kind of overlaps with Islam in some aspects. But I think that it just goes to show how much we can learn from, how much we can take from like fictional pieces of work. I think as Muslims we really focus on non-fiction, but not enough on fiction books. I think fiction books can help us to explain more wider and more meaningful lessons in life and philosophy, rather than searching for it in non-fiction, just because in fiction we can go through and empathize with characters who actually go through these things in these stories, rather than in non-fiction, and it's actually more meaningful to us. We cry at characters um, going through something, going through a battle, going through tough times in books, rather than read it in non-fiction. Actually, yeah. So it just goes to show that it's more of an empathetic experience. So this is why I actually done this. Um, I kind of, in my own reading of Lord of the Rings, I really took in a lot of lessons, and I really liked. I really wanted to compare them to Islam because I think it really overlaps very, very well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this series. I'm planning to do more of these, like fantasy and Islam. I love fantasy and I also love Islam, and I think like fantasy as a genre as a whole really has a lot to say, and we can actually derive a lot of lessons from it, especially as Muslims, and especially yeah, especially in this day and age where a lot of fantasy is based in like good versus evil, and in times like these, in times of oppression of the Muslims, we really want something hopeful. We really want good to triumph over evil, and in fantasy we can actually experience that too, and in Islam too. And yeah, so the next series which I'll be doing will be Star Wars. So yeah, I can't wait to do the Star Wars one. So yeah, stay tuned for that. So yeah, assalamu alaikum. Hope you enjoyed and learnt something too. And yeah, bye for now.